Imagine a college dorm room where the mundane becomes the unthinkable. Picture a young, eager student entering his dorm room for the first time, the scent of old books and dust greeting him. The room is small, cramped even, but it's his new home, his sanctuary for the next 4 years. Now let's call this student John. John is your typical college freshman, full of dreams and aspirations. He's excited for what the future holds, not knowing that his room holds a chilling secret. As days pass, John starts noticing odd occurrences. His belongings are not where he left them. Books move from the shelf to the desk on their own. His laptop, previously switched off, suddenly comes alive in the middle of the night. He hears whispers, an indistinct murmur that seems to echo from the very walls of his room. He initially brushes it off as the result of stress, lack of sleep, or even pranks from his friends. But as the incidents increase, so does his unease. The whispers grow louder, the movements more frequent, and the atmosphere in the room more oppressive. His roommate, a quiet, reserved individual, seems oblivious to it all. He's always been reclusive, disappearing for days on end without a word, leaving John alone in the room with the strange happenings. One fateful night, John uncovers the truth. He stumbles upon an old yearbook, buried deep within the college library. There, in grainy black and white, is his roommate, with a date that sends chills down his spine. The date is from over 50 years ago. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. His roommate was not a student, but a ghost, a vestige of the past. A former student, lost to time, still clinging to the dorm room he once called home. In the end, he was sharing his room not with a fellow student, but with a restless spirit. The mundane college life he once knew had morphed into a chilling nightmare, a tale of the paranormal cloaked in the guise of normalcy. A library, a sanctuary of knowledge, can also be a playground for the paranormal. In the heart of a bustling college campus, nestled between lecture halls and dormitories, was a grand old library. Its hallowed halls were a haven for students seeking solace in books and knowledge. But unknown to many, the library had a resident that was not listed on the college roster. It all started one late night when a group of students, let's call them the late night scholars, were studying in the library. The clock had struck midnight, and they were alone, surrounded by nothing but the soft rustling of pages and the faint hum of the overhead lights. Then, out of nowhere, they heard a whisper. It was low and unintelligible, like a hushed conversation just out of earshot. The scholars dismissed it as the wind, or maybe their tired minds playing tricks on them. But then, it happened again. And again. The whispers, always just out of comprehension, seemed to follow them, growing louder and more frequent as the nights rolled on. But the whispers were just the beginning. Books began to fall off shelves, landing open on the floor, pages fluttering like startled birds. Strange, considering the library was as still as a photograph, with no breeze or movement to explain the sudden chaos. And then, there was the figure. More than one scholar claimed to see a ghostly presence moving between the bookshelves, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. They described it as a tall figure, its form vague and indistinct, but undeniably human. It would appear and disappear, always just at the edge of their vision, leaving them with a feeling of unease that lingered long after they'd left the library. The scholars tried to ignore these strange occurrences, convincing themselves it was nothing more than the stress of college life. But deep down, they knew something was amiss. The library, once a sanctuary of learning, had become a maze of mystery and fear. This library was not just home to books, but also an unseen resident from the other side. Fraternity houses are known for their wild parties, but what if the guests are not of this world? Let's delve into a chilling tale of a fraternity that moved into an old house, only to discover they weren't alone. Picture this: a group of eager young men excited to embark on their journey of brotherhood, unknowingly stepping into a realm of the unknown. The house they chose had seen better days. It was an old, worn-down mansion with creaking floors and dark corners, but it held an irresistible charm. It was the perfect place for a fraternity house, or so they thought. From the first night, things were off-kilter. Doors would open and close on their own, lights would flicker, and strange noises echoed through the halls. Yet the fraternity brothers dismissed these events, attributing them to the house's old age. But as the days turned into weeks, the inexplicable occurrences escalated. Whispers in the dark, chilling drafts in the middle of summer, and the eerie feeling of being watched became a part of their daily lives. One night, during a lively party, the fraternity's record player suddenly screeched to a halt, and the lights dimmed. A chilling wind blew through the room, making everyone's hair stand on end. Then, the unthinkable happened. A spectral figure materialized in the middle of the room. Dressed in old-fashioned clothes, it stood there, silent and eerie. The room fell into a terrified silence as the apparition faded away. The fraternity members were shaken, but their curiosity outweighed their fear. They decided to investigate the history of the house. What they discovered was a tragic tale from decades ago. The house had once been a fraternity house for another group of young men. One of them, a popular member, had met an untimely end in a hazing ritual gone wrong. His death had been covered up, and the fraternity disbanded, leaving the house and its ghostly occupant behind. The spectral figure they had seen was believed to be this fraternity brother, forever trapped in the house where his life was cruelly cut short. The realization sent shivers down their spines. They had moved into a house haunted by a spectral fraternity member. Despite the fear, they chose to stay, respecting the house's tragic history. They made peace with their spectral fraternity brother, acknowledging his presence and apologizing for the injustice he had faced. The disturbing occurrences didn't stop, but they became less frequent, almost as if the spirit was appeased. In their quest for brotherhood, they found themselves living with a spectral fraternity member. Living in the house became a rite of passage, a chilling testament to their bond. And so, the old house stood, a silent witness to the living and the dead, bound together in an eerie fraternity of their own. Not all horror stories involve the supernatural. Some monsters are all too human. Just as our student, we'll call him Ethan, discovered during his sophomore year. Ethan was an ordinary student, balancing academics, friendships, and the occasional campus party. But one day, he began noticing something strange. He felt watched, followed. At first, he dismissed it as paranoia, fueled by late-night study sessions and too much caffeine. But then, his friends started noticing it too. A figure, always lurking in the background, always just out of sight. The figure was always there, at the edge of Ethan's vision, a shadowy presence that seemed to appear at the most unexpected times. In the library, in the cafeteria, even outside his dorm room. Ethan's unease grew into dread. The figure was getting closer, the sense of danger more palpifying. Soon Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. The figure, faceless and relentless, was always a few steps behind him. Ethan tried to confront it, but it would always disappear, leaving him questioning his sanity. The tension built up like a storm, the air thick with fear and anticipation. One fateful night, the figure closed in. Ethan was walking back to his dorm after a late-night study session. The campus was eerily quiet, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under Ethan's hurried steps. Then he heard it, the echo of his own footsteps. He turned around, and there it was, the figure, closer than ever before. In the dim light, Ethan could barely make out its features. It was a fellow student, someone he'd seen around campus but never really knew. The climax was a hair-raising confrontation, but Ethan found the courage to face his stalker, to confront the fear that had been haunting him. In the end, the real horror was not the supernatural, but the terror inflicted by a fellow human. Ethan's story is a chilling reminder that sometimes our worst fears can be all too real, all too close and all too human. From haunted dorm rooms to campus stalkers, these tales remind us that horror can lurk in the most unsuspecting places. Let's take a moment to reflect on the chilling stories we've just heard. First, there was the dorm room nightmare, an innocent student's sleep disrupted by unexplainable occurrences, only to find out that their room was a gateway to the afterlife. Then, we explored the haunted library, where the quiet whispers of books turned into chilling echoes of the past, of souls lost between the shelves. We dared to venture into the abandoned fraternity house, a place of forgotten memories and lingering spirits, where laughter and camaraderie once filled the halls, replaced by an eerie silence. Lastly, we were hunted by the Campus Stalker, A terrifying tale reminding us that sometimes the monsters are not supernatural, but human. So, next time you walk through your campus late at night, remember, you're never truly alone.